Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Your Money, Your Business. Today I'm joined by a man who people called the poster child for what not to do, describing himself: "For most of my life, I was angry, down on myself, seriously overweight, over 100 pounds, mediocre at best at everything I did, and completely miserable with every aspect of my life. And I felt like a failure trying to live up to my dad's image." He spent a lifetime mastering the art of falling into the next thing and learning about what it means to have worth as a man when you have no role model. From the first moment I met our guest, I was totally mesmerized by his story and by his compelling speaking skills. No surprise then that he's been a minister for 30 plus years and now, yes, accidentally falling into it, a life coach. So, coming to you direct from North Carolina and Ontario, Canada, let me introduce David Price, husband and father to 2 girls, and invite you to join us in conversation. You're listening to Your Money, Your Business, the podcast with me, Debbie Colburn. I'm a small business expert and a former professional accountant turned money mindset guide. And I am obsessed with helping you achieve all those things you've dreamed of and thought were out of your reach, with helping you figure this money stuff out. My goal on this podcast is to help you break the cycle of feast or famine with your cash flow and to help you grow your wealth and sustain it over the long term. We dive deep. We get real and we get raw, discovering and exploring what is really possible for you and letting go of all those things that are holding you back. If you've ever thought it's not enough looking at your bank balance or think, "I'll never get that paid off," when you open up the credit card statement, maybe you're sick and tired of constantly being worried, of just getting by, and you know you're missing out on key opportunities again and again, or maybe you're done with the constant arguments over money, then this is absolutely the right place. We'll bring you a whole new way to look at money, profit, cash, wealth, tackle the challenges, share the ideas, the tips and the tactics and the strategies, and get you connected to the right resources. Think of this as your weekly prescription of money mastery development, and leave the hard work up to me. No matter what's going on in your life right now, I've got your back. Ready? Buckle up, take a deep breath, and join me in a conversation about breakthrough to the next level. So I'm super happy that you accepted the invitation, because when I look through your story and so on, men don't like to talk about their feelings and their stories and stuff like that. And I work with a lot of men, and that typically is the area that is, the problem. So you're like, here's the poster child of what you need to do.
Well, I've not been called that very many times, Debbie. Usually it's, here's the poster child for what not to do. So I'm glad I can help somebody out.
Yeah, well, it's that you have the experience, you've got your story and everything, and then it makes it easier to relate to other people because you share that. One of my coaches is he's a former FBI agent, and he coaches men who have been in toxic relationships, but they are relationships where there has been emotional abuse. And it's an area you're probably aware of, that about 60% of men have been subjected to emotional abuse by women. And I happen to have a son who was not only emotionally abused, but also physically abused by his second ex-wife. But there's a whole, you can see the pattern in there and so on. But it's fascinating because this friend of mine who's on his pictures, and his business is called Mind Medic Coaching, because coming from the FBI, he was on deployment teams where they were always dealing with chaos and crisis. And yet, even though he had all the physical equipment to be able to deal with that, that actually became a huge risk when he went home because he had guns and stuff, and his wife, yeah, a very extreme case. Let's get started here. You're a pastor, right?
I am, yes, ma'am. I've been a minister for over 30 years.
In North Carolina all the time, or tell me a little bit about how you got into that particular thing.
Sure. I'm from Kentucky originally. I tell people that everything I've ever done was either I fell into it or it sort of happened accidentally, and that's no exaggeration. I spent 20 years coaching sports, youth sports, and school sports. Fell into that backward, fell into ministry backward. The church where I grew up lost its minister. I was 20 and they asked me to fill in, and that became a permanent gig. And so I wasn't planning on doing that. I wasn't planning on becoming a life coach, but my life was so transformed by what I learned that I sort of fell into that. And so it's just, I mean, I'm really envious of people who like they plot it out and they go do the thing because I've just been falling into stuff, my whole life. It's worked out, but it's been a little hectic, it's been a little uncertain.
Is that that's interesting because a lot of people that have a little bit of a streak of uh, I'm going to say control freak, but they like to the type A, the quote unquote type A personalities. They struggle a little bit when it's your life is being guided by what I call following the nudges. And do you find that some of that?
Well, it's tough. You don't feel like you have a lot of control, and the foundation of my coaching program and my life philosophy is take 100% responsibility for your life and everything in it. That's where everything begins. And so even when things are out of control and you feel like, you were talking about your son-in-law being in the military, certainly his whole life is at the mercy of his superiors. They tell him everything to do and everywhere to go, and yet to make life the way that he wants it, he's got to have control of his mindset. He's got to have control of his responses. He's got to have control of his words. And so, even when life is at its most out of control, still to have the sort of life that we want, we still got to be in control. And so it can be tough. I mean, I just feel like my life has been like a ping pong ball, just bam, 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 all over the place, and just trying to get control as the next thing happens. So yes, it can be tough.
I one of the things that I have learned through my life and through watching a lot of the people around me and so on who become successful is that while it feels like it's a little bit of a ping pong, when you get the opportunity to step back, and I think that happens sometime once you get over 50 and you've got enough life experiences, you can go, okay, well, that thing that I did back there, I'm actually using this little slice of it in this, that one over there, because that's exactly how it was for me. Because I started off my life going to university to be a veterinarian, and ended up moving over into kinesiology, study of human movement. And I still have a deep love for the movement of the mammalian body, and I have um, a dog fitness business, which pulls from that experience. And I can take pieces, 25 years as a professional accountant. I use that in my business now, even though I don't do it the same way. So that ping pong is an essential game that you have to
Yeah.
play. And sometimes you're like the wild volley that you have no idea where you're
Yes,
going to end up and
yes.
where the rally's going to stop. So is anyone else in your family in the pastoral facility, or it literally was you just got off a cliff?
No, I mean, it occurred to me because I've always loved public speaking. I've always been a helper from my earliest moment, or my earliest memories. I've always been helping people. People have always felt comfortable talking with me. I've always been an advice giver and that sort of thing. And so I've always sort of been in this space personally, and I thought about ministry, but never really took it seriously. I'm an only child. My father died when I was 7, which is a huge part of kind of why I ended up where I am. But he was a prison guard and a social worker. My mother's a was a worked in a social work office, and so no ministry in my family. So no, I mean it's totally out of the blue. But one thing I love about what you said, Debbie, that is key, and it's something that we pick up by experience, but it's something that can be taught. And it's so important is to understand what you just said. Those experiences that you're going through might feel random, out of control, and even unpleasant, but there's something in them for us to get every single time. I tell people all the time, we say sometimes we say, one day we'll look back on this and laugh. Well, if we're going to do it one day, why don't we do it now? Let's go ahead and do it now instead of being such a sourpuss about the whole thing, right? And so we said, well, one day we can look back on this and learn something. Why don't we do it now, right? So what we learn as we're older is don't wait until 30 years from now and look back and learn. Let's start looking at it now and saying, okay, what is there that I can learn? How is this making me better? What lessons can I take from this? So, what you said is so important, and it's a skill that we all can learn no matter how old you are.
Awesome. I love, and yeah, it's very, very clear that you like public speaking. And there's a lot of people that ministry is the place that they get that. Ministry is the Toastmasters of the informal education to being a public speaker.
It
You
is.
know, especially you're in the South. Some of the best orators like Les Brown and so on. They come from that Baptist church preaching
Martin
kind
Luther
of kind
King.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All of them. So you mentioned that your father was a prison guard. Well, I guess they call them a corrections officer these days. I'm not sure how much you know about my background, but I did a chunk of work, mentoring and meeting with a white collar support group, guys in there, and there are a lot of them that have horror stories about prison guards from their experiences and so on. And I can imagine that there's probably some of your story that occupation, that career that your father had, you can't just take off the uniform and leave it at work. I'm guessing some of it came out at home.
It probably did, David. But I'll tell you something that has had a huge impact on my life in two different ways. My father was, for his day especially, so he died when I was 7, so that's 48 years ago. So things were very different 48 years ago,
Hmm.
especially in that sort of world. My father, even then, was known as very compassionate, respectful of inmates, treated them like humans, loved them, cared about them, tried to help them. That was his thing. He was known for that. Everybody talked about that. There was an incident one time where the lights went out, and my father was at the mercy of some of the inmates where he was, and they were protecting him because he had always been good to them.
Hmm.
And so my father was known for that in all aspects of life. He was that kind of person. So I learned that from him. I got that from him, that even in that situation where he had all the power, he used his power for good, made a
Right.
huge impact on me. Funny thing though is, and I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but funny thing about that though is that this also I have allowed it to have a negative impact on my life because my dad was a lot to live up to. My dad was a lot to live up to. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about my father. That's a lot of pressure to try to be that, to try to live
It
up to that.
It is. I literally have a guest that I'm going to be interviewing after you who talks about a lot about daddy issues. And she specifically mentions that daddy issues are common with men as well, whether it's a same-sex relationship. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but that's okay. Whether it's men to their father, it's or women to their father, daddy issues are broad spectrum, and that would be a challenge to live up to. I know that my father is he's people don't say anything bad about him at all just because he's leaned into what is his thing. But it's again, it can feel like you're always in the shadow. My mother the same way, even though I know in the reality that's just horse crap. When you look back, how do you see that showing up in your life where you're letting that take over, so to speak?
Yeah, well, it definitely it definitely has. I mean, I have very serious tendencies toward low self worth, self hatred, um, dismissal of my worth and ability as a human being, particularly as a man. Losing my dad at such a young age robbed me of the ability to watch how a man behaves and to learn how a man acts and that sort of thing. And so, in any group of men, particularly, I always feel like the least. In any group of ministers, I feel like the fraud. In any group of sports coaches, I feel like the fake. In any group of dads, I feel like the worst. So losing my dad, so I have manhood issues and dad issues from that regard. But what you specifically asked about was it's been easy to beat myself up for not being my dad. And so, you know, unfortunately, what happens is because I've never heard anybody say anything negative about my dad, there's a picture of my dad as a perfect man. Well, he wasn't. He wasn't perfect. There's no way he was perfect. He was an overeater. He didn't take good enough care of himself. That's part of the reason he died so young. Had a little bit of a temper, and some other issues that my dad was not perfect, but in my mind, and you know how it is with dads, in my mind, he's the man and he's
Mhm.
perfect. And so anytime I'm imperfect, I really beat myself up. And I really feel like a complete failure because I have not lived up to his standard. That's not his fault.
Yep.
He was, I'm not criticizing him for being a great guy, and we all should be great guys.
Mhm.
But it's just really hard to deal with that disconnect.
So you throughout your life, did you find a male mentor, anyone to look up to, or has it been a continual? I didn't really realize that this was a problem until I was 50, and now I'm going down that path, and I'm going to start healing those pieces.
Well, a lot of answers to that. I did not realize it was such an issue when I was younger because young people don't get those things. What I do know now, looking back, though, that God was very, very merciful to me, and that God brought into my life three men in particular. One when I was very young, and then two later on. Um, all three of them were imperfect, very imperfect. One of them we would talk about toxic masculinity today. He was, really super masculine, macho, and that sort of thing. But in many ways, I believe that's exactly what I needed was someone who was very manly, very masculine. Um, that helped me. That was a help to me. And then these other two men later, highly imperfect, but very important to me, so that I could have close to me and deeply ingrained in my life, I could have men to connect to. And I know that people see that all kinds of different ways, Debbie. And some people feel like, I'm not going to get into all that how people see it, but I know some people see it differently. As a man who lost his dad at a very young age, I can tell you that for me, I needed men in my life who were models of being masculine, being manly, being male, being husbands, dads, that, sports and cars and that sort of thing. I needed that. And it was a tremendous blessing to me. It did
Yeah.
not give me everything I needed, but it gave me a lot.
Yeah, and I think that that's it. That's important. And you're right. People will see that as very different ways. They will see it as, you know, you're just getting a bias of masculinity on steroids, let's call it that, versus masculinity with the soft, uh, feely touches. But what it does is it gives you context against which to see your memories of your father, because it's not even just that you lost your father at a young age. You lost your father at an age of that 7 years where all the input that you got from him is in the formative years, and then it was a void. So there's no counterbalance to that.
Right.
And that's the challenge. So now you've got let's say four models, and you can say, okay, this I like the piece from that, I like the piece from that, don't like that. Got to just like you're doing in your business. I need to be better at closing sales. I need to find someone to coach me on how to close a sale, not just on selling, on a very specific piece
Yeah.
of that. And I see that as being kind of where you are
Yeah.
right now. And
Yeah.
when you talk with your clients, some of those clients will help reveal for you some of the things that you need. They might end up actually being some of your mentors down the road.
That has definitely happened. That's so insightful and so true. That has definitely happened. One of the blessings that I've gotten from working with men, and in the church, but in my coaching business as well, and in sports, but yes, I've never stopped needing that male example and influence and relationship. And we never do. As guys, we think we do, but we never stop needing that. And that's the benefit of having these men around us, that they can still continue to influence us. And you're right. We can kind of pick and choose. We can look and go, don't like that, but he really does this well.
Yeah, exactly. Do you follow Lewis Howes at all? The School
Yes,
of
ma'am. Yeah,
Greatness.
Mask of Masculinity, sure.
You've read that, so you've read that book?
I have not read it. I know that he wrote it, and I've followed a lot of his work around that.
Yeah, I always recommend to my male clients that have some challenges in that area is to the two podcasts, the first one where he reveals the story, the second where he follows up on that, and then the book, because it's so telling. He's from an athletic background, professional athlete, and you can there are secrets, and your whole psyche feels uncomfortable because you think you are lesser than, you're the only one, etc. And
All of those things.
all of those things, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
So I don't know which podcast. I'm a big researcher. Anybody that knows me or after a while knows that I don't call myself the queen of Google lightly. I'm a huge researcher. So one of the things that you talked about is your um, feeling like you were a victim, always blaming other people for the things that were happening to you. Is that still happening? How did you get past that? And was there a turning point where you went, this is nuts?
Well, there certainly was a turning point. I tell people I'm a very slow learner. My dad died at 7. I was in my 40s before I figured out something needs to change. And so I really hit rock bottom, reached out to a friend. He shared a book with me called The University of Success by Og Mandino. By chapter 2, I was a brand new man. It completely changed my life. And the reason that it changed my life was because it taught me that I could take responsibility. It taught me that I do not have to be a victim. Yes, it is still something that I struggle with. Anytime that something goes wrong or that I'm frustrated about something, my go to is, well, why won't other people cooperate with me on this? No question about it. And I think people need to know, Debbie, and I think you would agree that people need to know that no matter who you are, no matter how successful you get, how high you go, how much money you make, Lewis Howes, Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, you, me, we all still deal with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
New level, new devil. You don't ever get past these sorts of things. Yes, I still deal with it. But now I'm much better able to deal with it because I understand, and this is pillar one of the four pillars of success that I teach. This is pillar one, taking responsibility for your life and everything in it. Whether you created it, caused it, or you didn't, doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. Your life right now is what it is. And we spend so much time wishing it were different, fighting it. Why does it have to be this way? Why? All completely worthless. And says, okay, here's what it is. What am I going to do about it? What's going to be my response? Taking responsibility is where life change begins. And until we do that, we're always going to be stuck in suffering. Always.
I love that, and you've said that a couple of times. And what I wanted to put a sort of a pin in is there's a difference. How do I describe this? In the 12-step programs. Now, I don't. It's not something that I've been part of, but I know from my work with other people that number one thing that they teach them is that you are powerless, and I think that that can be distorted, misconstrued, because they will say, well, how can I be 100% responsible for my life when I'm being told I'm powerless? And it's understanding that it's not the power, it's that you need to take ownership for the things that you do, like you say, for your reactions, for that. Are there things lightning is going to strike and stuff like that? But when you stop blaming others for it, and in this environment, in the social media
Oh,
environment,
oh
damn,
my God.
you
Oh,
look at anything, and like 80% of the population is
oh,
woe is me.
oh.
Why you charge so much? You should be giving back, blah, blah, blah. And it's an epidemic. And that's one of the things for me in my business that my vision for generations out is that scarcity mindset just doesn't exist. But right now we perpetrate it, and
Oh,
you only have to look at every ad, and it's like, so taking 100% responsibility, whether or not you believe that you had any effect on it. If something is happening to you, then you did something, you thought something, 100% responsible for thinking about how you react to the thing that you saw. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. So I
no.
absolutely love that. So let's go down this masculinity thing. You tell a story about a Disney princess comforter. How would you? I don't know. I don't even remember what the context of it was, but I thought there's something in that story that the audience needs to hear. Do you remember telling the
I
story?
know. I don't. I mean, I know the comforter, but no. What did I tell? I don't
I
remember.
don't know. I don't know.
Oh,
It struck me. You were doing an interview, and I think it had something to do with I was sitting in a bed, and I had a Disney comforter over me. I don't know. We'll leave it at that. Sometimes things are.
oh, I wish I knew, but
uh,
I have no idea. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's okay. Don't apologize, because obviously it was what this is the thing when people are talking on interviews or you're talking in conversations and something pops into your mind. And I use this in concept of business and so on. You're driving along and that idea pops into your head. And if you don't have your Evernote
I
open
know.
to be able to log it down, by the time you get home, it's gone, because for whatever reason it popped into your head, it was there for that moment, and then it was no
Yep.
good. So
I
my
know.
guess is that at the time it meant something, and now whatever it was, it's resolved. So awesome. So then we'll drop back to when you started your life coaching, and you describe yourself as, or as you started getting into that area, sad, angry, frustrated, feeling like a complete failure. And that is, I am so happy to see you today because that is not the person that you look like now. And I know that there are days when you just talked about the three big mentors. Brendan Burchard has been huge in my growth. And in the early days, there I would have days where I would just go, oh my God, I just need a little Brendan in my life. Just to pop up one of his videos and so on. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but he's still there, and so on, from many different
Yes,
ways.
yes.
So how'd you get past that? How did it show up in your life? uh, you're married, you have kids. I presume if you have a Disney princess comforter, either
Yes,
that or
ma'am.
there's another story we should be
Yeah,
talking
yeah. So
about.
that's why I don't want to tell the Disney print. No, I'm kidding. No, I do have a daughter. I have two sons and a daughter. She's the middle child, as she will tell you every time. She'll tell you how it was like to be a middle child. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, it showed up in a million ways. I mean, I was mediocre at best at everything I did. I wanted to do as little as possible and skate by and put as little effort out as I could to get whatever I needed to get in life. I did that in school. I did it in work. I didn't work on myself. I didn't try to improve myself. So I mean, there were lots of ways that that showed up. And as you can imagine, Debbie, as you know, when you put out uh, crappy effort, you get crappy results and you get a crappy life. And that's exactly what I had. Not, I'm not saying that like that my kids or my wife were crap. I don't mean that. I mean that my experience, I had a lot to be grateful for. I had a wonderful family, a mother who loves me. People were telling me, you're a good speaker, a good minister. People were telling me, we love you coaching our kids, etc. But as you know, Debbie, if you're not in a place to believe it, all the external validation is worthless. In fact, sometimes it's harmful because you're just like, no, 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 no. And that's all I ever did. So my experience of life was a disaster. I was so unhappy. I was 100 pounds overweight. I looked up how to commit suicide, try to find the most painless way to do it. Um, just horrible, horrible experience. And finally, that's sort of what like it came to a head, and I was okay. I got to do something. That's when I reached out to my friend. It just got too much to bear, and
Mhm.
something had to give. I had to get out of it some way. Take the easy way out, or let's fix it. Thank God I chose to fix it.
That's interesting because that's a piece of information I wasn't able didn't find, which is good and bad. And I have a friend who does a TED talk, and he talks about his moment in prison where he has a nightmare where he's got a gun to his head. And we've talked a number of times, and he describes suicide where people don't continue through with that process as the point where you're in your head and the pressures and the thoughts are so uncomfortable that you just want that pain to end,
Mm.
but you don't want to end your life. You just want to end that thing. And sometimes it's as simple as the University of Success book referred to by your friend, picking up that phone. I think that's an important thing for people to remember is that, again, I have to put a rider on this, on this video because of the discussion. But
Right.
a lot of people, they don't really want to end their life. They just want to stop that thing, and they don't know how to see the light at the end of the tunnel because they can't see the light at the tunnel.
Right.
Sometimes they need someone to drill in from the other side and punch a hole into the tube so that there's a glimmer. And I think that sounds like
Oh,
what it
yeah.
happens.
100%. And by the way, Debbie, I'll just say, and whatever you want to do with this part of the discussion is fine. But and you haven't seen that story because I don't really talk about it very much. I don't like to, not because I'm ashamed of it, but I don't like to talk about it a lot because it could potentially cause more harm than good. So, and here's kind of what I mean by that. So I do not recommend to people or hold myself out as here's how you get over a suicidal thought, go get a book. That's not my point. I do not tell people that. I tell people, if you even think about wanting to end your life, get professional help right now. Call the hospital, call the psychiatrist, call, I don't care who you call, somebody. I'm not saying that dealing with that is so easy, just go get a book. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that's what helped me get started on the road. So I just like to be really clear about that. But
Absolutely,
you're,
absolutely.
yeah,
I'm glad you
yeah,
said that, you said that, because
100%.
you're right. Mine could be a misconstrued as to be so easy,
Yeah,
but it's
no,
absolutely not.
yeah, no, no, no. When people get that thought, they need to get on the phone or go to the hospital or do something. But yeah, you're right. You're so overwhelmed with sadness that you cannot imagine it's ever going to get better, and you don't know how to make it better. That's why reaching out for help is so essential. You cannot do it on your own. You've got to, there's something out there that you don't know that you need, and somebody knows it and they can get it to you. So you have to keep probing and asking and reaching until finally you get that person who's able to connect you to it.
And I think that what you just said is, it's true for every area of your life. I was just watching a training with Alex Hormozy talk about masculinity. If you wanted, that he oozes that. But he was just a reiteration of, you've got this idea and you're down here and you can see four paths forward, but beyond those four paths forward, there's a whole other box over here that you can't even see. It's not even on your radar.
Yep.
And all it takes is, that's not meant to be lightly, but you need other people
Yes.
to be able to take one of those threads and punch it into your view.
Yes.
And then it might not be a straight line up, but at least it's
Yep.
that first nudge to get
Yep.
going, and nudge to get going, and so on. So super,
Absolutely.
super cool. So let's segue into, because I think this works with what you're talking about, is values. A lot of people, I know for me, I couldn't truly, I knew them kind of in a loosey goosey kind of way in my head up until I was about 50, but it wasn't until I really dived into them and said, what are my real values in life? And what are my real values in business? And am I trying to build something that's in conflict with my values?
Yeah.
So I'm a maverick. In all sense of the words. You think of a maverick horse and stuff like that. Try and corral me down and pin me to do the same stuff over and over on his planned schedule. I am busting out of the corral. I am gone. And so that I struggled with that, because the way I built my businesses, even though I was self-employed, I was working in corporate environments, it all felt like someone was trying to lasso my feet and hold me tied. But when I started to figure out what my key 3 and 5 values were, so what are your thoughts on that? What are yours? How do you structure your life into that, or not?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So my three values are faith, family, and growth, in that order. I am really feeble at all three of them. And so the temptation is when I say that for people to go, oh, so these are the three things he's got down cold. Not even close. I'm a weak believer, struggling believer. I'm a very, very faulty husband and father. And I don't always work on my growth the way that I should. So when I say that those are my values, I don't in any way intend to imply that this is what I've got down. It isn't. But these are the things that are important to me. And so in my day, everything that I do during my day needs to align with one of those three values. And if it doesn't, then that's going to be a very difficult day. And I think this is why people struggle and sometimes feel this almost vague or amorphous sort of something's wrong and I don't know what it is. Why do I feel this way? It could be because deep down inside, you know what you value, but your day is not structured with your values. It's not aligned with your values. And so you think that you're going that way, but you're really going that way. And that disconnect is very uncomfortable. So I think there's a couple of ways to come up with what your values are. A really easy way, and where I suggest people start if they've never done it, is just to look up a list of core values online. James Clear has a list of core values. He used to have 100, I think. Now he's got 50. But you can go through that, and by process of elimination, you can just what resonates with me, what doesn't. Circle what resonates with you. Then go through them and compare them. Which is more important? Cross out the, and eventually you get come up with three, and those are your values. The other thing that you can do is come at it from the other side, and that is say, well, what is it that I think I want in life? What do I want in life? Do I want $1 million? And then go through that 7 why exercise. Why do you want 1 million? Well, I want it so I can. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? Eventually, you're going to get to what really matters to you, and probably it's going to be something like family, security, adventure, peace of mind, whatever. So you can get to your core values that way. The reason they're important is because, again, you then have to structure your life vision, your goals, and your daily activities around your core values. And I can honestly say, Debbie, that 95% of my day is aligned with my values, if not more. I prioritize. First thing I do in the morning is work on my relationship with God after I get coffee. Um, and, and then beyond that, I prioritize time with my family. If my kids want me to do something, I do it. I've lost out on a lot of money. I've lost out on a lot of me time. Not everybody's going to make that choice, and I'm not making a judgment on that. What I'm saying is this: for me, family is way up there. And if it's family or this, family's almost always going to win. That's the thing that we need to do day to day, whatever your values are. You need to have them. And at each thing that you do during the day, every single thing that you do, say this or my value. Well, wait, it is my value. Great, go do it. Wait a minute, that's not my value. Okay, let's discard that and do something that's aligned with your values. Now, not everybody can do that the way that I can because my schedule is flexible. For instance, Debbie, you have somebody who works a 9 to 5, and right now they need that 9 to 5 to put food on the table. A lot of people are really miserable at that 9 to 5. So if you cannot get a job that's aligned with your values, align the way you do your job with your values. So let's say that you're a Christian. You've got this 9 to 5 job that you hate. Then make that 9 to 5 job a way that you can express your Christian faith in what you say and in what you do. Remember that 9 to 5 job is helping you provide for your family. Well, my family's my value. Okay, you're providing for them. So
Yep.
that 9 to 5 job aligns, right? It's an alignment. So growth. This 9 to 5 job I have is some dinky menial job, and what I want to do is grow personally. Look, there's nothing that's going to help you grow more than being in a situation that's really, really hard that you've got to figure out how to make the best of. So what I'm saying, Debbie, and I think that you would agree with this, that you can make 100% of your day align with your values if you are committed to doing so. And when you do, every day is going to be a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with you. And I think a lot of people, as I kind of described it, they know inside them that
Yep.
they're out of alignment, but they
Yep.
don't quite know. They can't. they can't find the words for what they're out of alignment
That's
with.
right.
And
That's
that's
right.
the challenge. I love that you referenced James Clear's list. I started with Darren Hardy from his.
Okay.
He had
That's it.
a hundred word list,
That's
and
it. Yeah.
I go back to it every couple of years. I go back to it to say, is there anything on here? Because there is a reality where for some people over the length of their life, their values, not all three, but one of them might actually change. And
Oh yeah.
and to fine tune them, because on that list, it had many of the words are very similar, but
Yeah.
there's subtle nuances. I remember having a coaching call with one of my clients where he was talking about a challenge with they were going through huge challenge, and him and his wife, they were having these arguments and stuff, and he said she just doesn't get it. And I said, well, what is the problem? What is her biggest value? And he said to me, I think her biggest core value is security. And the fact that he said, I think, put up big warning bells to me saying, you might want to have that conversation
Yes.
instead of I think.
Yes.
But as we talked through it, and I went through the list and so on with him, it actually ended up, because things were very volatile and he was an entrepreneur and she wasn't, that her number one core value wasn't actually security, it was stability.
Mm.
And there is a subtle difference between those two things. And so that's how important that list is. And like you say, you start with 100, you circle 30, then you either do it the same day or you come back a couple days later and you go through that 30 and you carve it down to 10, and then you just keep carving it down until I could never get below 6, because for me, but my top 3 have always been there. My top number 1 is challenge.
Mm.
If when you say you look at everything in your day, and you can do this for your year, you can do it for your week, your months, your whatever, the decade. If what I'm facing isn't challenging me, I'm out. And I struggled with that as I was building the iteration of the online business before this, because the coaching groups that I was in, they were too low. The knowledge set, because of my experience, because of everything, because it was like I almost gave up. But I knew, because when I looked at it in that lens of challenge, it was because I just needed more challenge, which is, maybe that's weird, but I everything that has brought great joy and success and all those things to me are the things that people say to me, are you nuts, Debbie? You can't do that. Nobody's ever done that. You don't have the experience. And I'm like, I have this delusional belief in my ability to do stuff. So yeah, you're totally right. And my second one is adventure. I've got to be free to go. And financial stability doesn't come in until, or financial doesn't come into number 4.
Yeah.
Professional is number 3. So it's fascinating when you go through those things, because that there is a feeling of resistance when you're acting and behaving, and I
Yes.
think you might have different words for it, but there is an internal feeling of resistance. Oh, this is
Yeah.
hard. I'm not enjoying this. And it's different from, yeah, I'm doing the boring stuff that all comes with building businesses, or anything. There's always chunks that are boring that just have to get done. But
Right.
there's an
Yeah.
internal resistance, and when you're in alignment, it feels like the path of least resistance. That's exactly.
Exactly. That's and And putting a name on it, a label on it is so important. Debbie, what you were saying, if you didn't know that your top value was challenged, you might go through weeks and weeks of being bored and unhappy and have no clue why. But now that you know challenge, you can immediately say to yourself, is it challenging? No, it is. Okay, then I know what's wrong. So putting labels on those, I think, is really important.
Well, it's huge. If you just to use myself as a little bit of an example again, my career, I was a professional accountant. I worked with on contract with one of the big five accounting firms. When you think about challenge, it's a bit of an oxymoron where you're in a career that is governed by a very strict set of guidelines and legal rules. So I remember all the way through that. I used to refer to myself as a creative accountant, and I built my career working with startups, mergers and acquisitions, forensic accounting, all of those areas that had more challenge and knowledge and growth than the CA and the audit on the audit side. I would have, yeah, no, not for me. So even within, like you say, the 9 to 5 job, where you're talking about the 9 to 5 job, you can still craft and curate it so that it for the time that you're there until you figure out what is the next step, you can curate that to make it beneficial to you. So let's stop off there. Question. I'm going on a podcast I think in 2 weeks or so. It's all about bucket lists. They interview people for bucket lists, and you have a bucket list item, I think, right? At
I
least
do.
one. What
I
is your
do. Going to the UK.
so I'm actually doing a podcast. It's going to be released this week about um, money and planning vacations and so on.
Wow.
And part of our process, we have a framework for it. So when you say your bucket list is going to the UK, can you describe what that is? Because the UK is a big set of islands.
It is. It is. I mean, you got to hit London for sure. But I mean, I would love to see every part. I'd love to see Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland. I would love to see all of it. Where my musical hero Jeff Lynne came from, and the lead singer and founder of ELO. He came from Birmingham, and I know that's like a big industrial city, but I want to see that too. And I just want to see all of it. I mean, I want to see everything that's over there, the interior, the coast, the whole thing. And it's just weird. I mean, it's just something that I've loved for so many years, the history of it, the intrigue of it, the mystery of it. It's such an unbelievable place, such a huge role in history, and so much significance. I don't know. I just noticed myself falling in love with it over the years, and I just really want to go.
So where's your vision board?
Oh, it's on there. Yeah, it's on there. It's on my computer, and it's on there for sure. Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. My sister, on my dad's side, my family is after my grandpa. They're from uh, they're from the UK, and my sister. She had a sad couple of years where her husband. My sister's 12 years younger than me, but her husband passed away from brain cancer. So she just sold her house, which is fantastic, and she's in the process of getting her ancestral visa and moving to Scotland. She just literally bought a house in Scotland up in the Highlands.
Oh,
So
wow.
when you get to that point where you want to go, I will connect you with my sister, and because she literally she bought a house that has been a guest home. It has its own Facebook page. It's like an Airbnb, but she's not doing that. But we jokingly said to her, "So do we need to book online before we come and visit you, or what?"
No kidding. No
Yeah, but
kidding.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful, right on a lake. It's in the Highlands and so on. So you'll love that. I
I
England,
cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and if you have a, England is. I've been to the UK, all the different areas. But if you like history, and she has a degree in what we call old dead things because she has a degree in classical civilization. So, for example, when we went on a trip to Africa and stuff, we went to climb Kilimanjaro, but we stopped in England for a week because she wanted to do all the things that it took her 4 hours to go through the Tower of London, and I was through in 40 minutes because that's not my area, but wickedly fascinating that you're
Yes,
gonna you're gonna
yeah,
love it.
I can't wait.
Totally love it.
I can't wait.
Okay, so I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Sort of leans into the interests in what I work with. So the question is, in business, there's a need to generate revenue and profit, and we want to do profit from day one. But the money side, how do you deal with what some of us think about pastoral life, where it is almost anti-money? How do you balance those two almost conflicting ideas?
That's such a great question, and surprisingly, one I don't get asked very often. That's a really insightful question. There's two parts to it, I think. There's the internal part. There's me, and I used to have a really, really bad relationship with an attitude towards money. I thought that wealth was bad, being rich was bad, that working to get rich was bad. And so I had a really unhealthy view of all of that. So I've had to deal with that and overcome that and learn the truth about that. So there's that part of it. And I am in a much better place now being comfortable saying, I want to be wealthy. I want abundant wealth. I want a Cadillac Escalade. I want to be able to, whatever. I'm comfortable with that. But the other side of that is dealing with people and the appearance of that so as not to look like I'm exploiting my position for gain at the expense of other people. Because when other people deal with a minister, they're dealing with someone who's there for their benefit to help them, not to get something from them. There's a whole other bunch of stuff around that too. But anyway, um, so first of all, I don't market in any way, shape, or form to people I go to church with or other churches I work with. I don't, if I go and preach at a place, I completely leave off the business totally. Um, Not because I necessarily think it's all that wrong to do otherwise, but the perception of it would immediately make me toxic to other people. And I think that part of our obligation as business people and as human beings is being respectful of other people's views and realizing that yes, you might have a right to do something, but if it causes a problem in a relationship or for another person, you should think about foregoing that thing. Just think about it. So I'm very careful about how I let them come to me and find me. I don't go try look. I don't go looking for them or marketing to them. So I try to build a very solid wall between those two.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of those areas we could have a long, long, long conversation on this, but it's there ideas, the money and church and whatever religion or
Yep.
facet you
Yep.
want. Some
Yep.
people believe they're incompatible and others don't. And you look at some of the mega churches in the South, and you cannot possibly stick your head in the sand and go, they're not focused on money. You look at the same of what's the one? Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Calgary, where my home is. I'm not there right now. They are some of the biggest prime real estate owners in North America. Prime, beautiful stuff. So again, you can't. There are people who will argue over here, over there, and then there's in the middle. And I remember early on when I was starting my online business, one of the case studies that one of the big coaches used was a gentleman who was starting a monthly membership, but it was for pastors, ministers, I can't remember which specific one, but they were struggling to produce their sermons and their lesson plans or whatever every week. So he created a monthly membership where every week, they would pay a certain amount a month, and every week that he would produce that. And so they wouldn't have to do that piece, because obviously it's a chunk of work that you have to do, and particularly if you're doing that along with another job or something like that. So there's many different facets where the church and money intersect, and it can be good and it can be bad, and it's there is a happy place.
Yes, 100%, and it involves getting clear in your own mind where you come down on it, and it involves just being socially aware of other people and where they are and what is the best way to interact with them. I mean, it's just, it's simple. It's not easy, but it is simple to understand. What you got to figure it out for yourself, and you've got to deal with other people in love to help them be cool with it too.
And I think that, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about money or we're talking about
Yes.
Religion, that applies to absolutely everything in your
All of
personal relationships, in your business relationships, all
Yes.
of that.
100%.
And I think that is a super spot for us to end the interview.
Awesome.
I so appreciated your candor and your openness, and I love this conversation. I hope we get a chance to do another conversation later on, see how things have changed. I'm over here celebrating because you just finished another episode of Your Money, Your Business podcast. If you want more, head over to the website yourmoneypodcast.libsyn.com for all the show notes and all the links to each of the resources from today's episode. And if you're looking to step up your game, get new ideas and perspective, and ask live questions, be sure to get my exclusive 100 plus hidden self-sabotages workbook. The link is waiting for you at yourmoneypodcast.libsyn.com.